Anything else on the old gray stones?
No, the next thing I want to go into is the four-plate door. So with the gray stones, I wanted to kind of fully flesh them out because we hadn't really like put that together front to back on gray stones as portals. We talked about them a number of times, but I wanted to kind of fully flesh them out. The next couple parts with the four-plate door, it's just basically rehashing what we've already covered, so it's not something we'll have to dive deep into. But like to rehash what we covered in episode 11, there's basically three main theories for the four-plate door. So the first one was that the doors of stone are the four-plate door. And so, I'm sorry, the four-plate door is the doors of stone. And so with that theory, like one of the biggest clues was when he's talking to Caudicus, and Caudicus tells him, I've heard that on the oldest parts of the Lackless lands and the oldest parts of their ancestral state, there's a secret door, a door without a handle or hinges. He watched me to make sure I was paying attention. There's no way of opening it. It is locked, but at the same time, lockless. No one knows what's on the other side. So it's easy to see why people would associate the four-plate door with the lackless door that Caudicus talks about. The second theory was that they're hiding books or something that the masters want to keep secret. And so the biggest evidence for that was old Cobb, when he's telling one of the stories about Kvothe. He says, so Kvothe uses a dark magic that he found locked away in a secret book in the university. He speaks 3 terrible secret words and calls up a demon. So the dark magic that he finds locked away in a secret book in the university, you can see where people would interpret that he finds some secret magic by going through the four-plate door, and that there's something secret behind there. The third,
maybe he conjures up Bast.
Doubtful.
Just a thought.
Doubtful.
Maybe. Go ahead.
But the third was that the dead king that Feyda dreams about. She says, I had a dream about the door once. Valeritas was the name of an old dead king. His tomb was behind the door. And also, to go with that, Kvothe says early on when he's kind of listing his deeds that he does, he tells Chronicler, I have stolen princesses back from sleeping barrow kings. So that those two things lend towards that there's a old dead king behind the door. That's the theory that I subscribe to, and I think Rothfuss confirms that is the correct theory. Because, before that, we also have that the archives, they look like a giant greystone. So when he sees the archives for the first time, he says, when I reached the crest of the bridge, I saw the archives for the first time in my life, rising like some great greystone over the trees to the west. As I approach, and then another part he says, as I approached the archives, its gray, windowless surface reminded me of an immense greystone. So you could see where the fact that you have the archives rising like some great greystones over the trees to the west, you could see it like on a hill, like above everything else, similar to a barrow, which is like a pile of rocks or whatever. It's it's a burial ground that is kind of built up like a pyramid. You could think of as like a barrow. But those are the three main theories for what the four-plate door, what's behind the four-plate door.
Doesn't Kvothe call or isn't the four-plate door called Valeritas or have those words on it as well besides the dream?
Correct. Yeah, Valeritas is written on the door.
And I just want to re-up something that Tim said when we were talking about that the door itself, or maybe it's the way around the door that is that smooth gray stone that really reminds you of a gray stone anyway.
Yes. Yeah, it's described in a way that smooth gray stone. It is described like a gray stone. Like the archives is like a giant gray stone. The 4-plate door is like a gray stone as well.
So kind of as an aside of sorts, I mean, we know Fella has, significant power and all, but her having the dream that assigns to her quite a lot of power, don't you think? Or a lot of significance.
It's definitely significant, especially I think with what Rothfuss has told us, which we'll get into here shortly. I think there's definitely significance to it. It could be that this is showing that she has special, there's something special about her. Her powers are immense, or it could be that, this whoever's behind the 4-plate door is trying to feed dreams into people, that he's able to kind of send dreams into their mind. And so it could be something along those lines. I don't know. But yeah,
Well,
there's definitely something significant to the dream, whether that says something about her or says something about someone putting the dreams in her mind. That's a different story.
Well, I mean, because, Rothfuss could have selected a whole slew of different people that dream comes from, right? And he chose Fella. So, it's that in itself, yeah, it has to lend some significance. But, go ahead.
Is Fella the one who is in Elodin's class and knows the name of iron first?
Yeah.
Not the name of iron, the name of stone. But yes, she's the first one to be able to gain mastery over a name to the point where she can make a stone ring.
There you go, and it happens to be stone, so that may be something to it.
And she works in the archive. So, I mean, like I say, it could be that it's because of her power. She's obviously powerful. She's one of the handful of people in the world that know the name of stone, but also she works in the archives, so it could also be the fact that she's a namer that works in the archives and someone is reaching out to her. So I mean, well, again, you could look at it either way.
She's also almost killed, right, by what happens in the fishery.
Yeah.
And I mean, she's the only student that, when Kvothe is at the university, she's the only student that we are aware of that gets that mastery. Yes. Chronicler has it, but when we're there, she's the only one that. So I mean, that in itself lends a lot of significance to how powerful she is, how capable she is. I think there is a lot to the fact that she almost was murked at the fishery as well. So either she's being manipulated. And I'm only thinking that now because of what you mentioned about the dream. If she's being fed that dream, maybe she's being walked into, because we still don't know what exactly happened to, the tank, right? Mm-hmm. So we still don't know exactly what happened to that. So, but we know she was there, and she was the one that almost died. She was the one at closest to risk of death out of everybody.
It could be that in order to get past the 4-plate door, because it looks like a gray stone, it could be that you need to know the name of stone in order to be able to get past that door. And so the fact that she has an affinity towards the name of stone, it could be that's why someone behind the 4-plate door would be reaching out to her into her dreams, as manipulating her. Could be. I mean, this is all pure speculation. There's no evidence for any of this. I'm just saying, like, why would she have that dream? Like, it could be just something about her, or it could be that someone's feeding it to her. There's no way to know for sure, but there's got to be something about it.
What if behind the door is simply the lost and found of the archives?
Well, that's certainly one thing that's behind the door. That's not even debatable.
A cardboard box with black Sharpie marker, lost and found.
It's ludicrous, Tim. How would you put anything in there was found?
No, it's what they do is, like, when people leave their fucking nerdy ass cloaks, they fucking hide them behind the 4-plate door because they're like, get these fucking dork ass fucking cloaks.
Got another one. Just shuffling.
Never
Fucking
to be found
Lauren
again.
is hiding all the cloaks in the world. He's getting them all hidden behind the 4-plate door. He's just trying to fucking make me happy and eliminating these nerd ass
So
cloaks
the
from
door
the world.
the door finally opens and a shit ton of cloaks and anklets.
Yeah, yeah. And Master Lauren's like super into dusters, and he's trying to replace cloaks with dusters. And so he's got to fucking hide all the cloaks so he can fucking start his business of selling dusters on the side. He's like, hey man, I know you lost your cloak, but got this pretty fucking sweet duster.
I love the idea that like this guy has no emotion about anything, but then he's like, "Ooh, it's a nice duster there. What is that? What is that, leather?
Hey,
It's
you ever
good.
hear?
That looks nice."
You ever hear about the silent Chandrian? You know, the guy that wears that fucking gray duster? Pretty fucking cool, man. He's pretty cool.
Oh, you mean the cool one? The guy that's always
Yeah,
busting cigs and laying back?
Fucking Clint Eastwood. Like fucking just... What's the...
You can't whistle very well. He
No, my
tried to
mouth is too
whistle.
dry.
He just...
Mouth's too dry.
That was bad too.
Yeah, I can't do it. I don't know what to do. I can normally whistle, but yeah, apparently
I
I
got
can't
your back,
whistle
man.
right now.
Ready?
That's not bad. Oh,
It's
nice.
fucking Grey Dalcinci, man.
But you know what he would say when the song plays? He'd be like, "Fuck that song. Turn that shit off."
Yeah. It's like Clint Eastwood's a bitch.
So yeah, I see that. So yeah, so open up the door, a bunch of cloaks fall out, anklets, canes, things like that.
Fingerless
Canes,
gloves.
too.
So you have to throw all those things off this crypt where this sleeping barrow king is, where King Koopa.
Nah, he wouldn't hide fingerless gloves behind the door. He'd be passing those out. So it's definitely not fingerless gloves. Those are too cool. He's got
Go-kart gloves.
Wouldn't Lauren rather have people wearing gloves? All the books.
Not
Yeah,
fingerless.
that's what I'm saying. He's passing out fingerless gloves.
No, I think he wants fingers on them gloves.
That's it.
Yeah.
He's getting rid of the fingerless gloves. He's passing out fingered gloves.
Yeah.
So you don't
Just
get your oil on the pages.
He cuts off the fingers. He has the fingerless gloves. He puts those in the lost and found, but the fingers
So
from
he
the
just gives
fingerless
out-
gloves,
he
he
just
gives
gives-
those out, and you just slide those over your fingers.
Everybody's wearing little
Yeah.
little fabric thimbles
Yeah.
on their fingers.
Yeah,
Just-
finger nipples.
so that's the scribs. They all have finger nipples. They're all
finger
assigned
nipples
to
and
wear-
dusters. They're all wearing finger nipples and
It's
dusters.
weird. I don't know why Rothfuss didn't write that in.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's-
I'm glad we pieced it together, but
Yeah.
we should have wrote that in.
It's in there. Clearly, it's not like we're just pulling this out of thin air.
I'm sure
So
he's
how-
writing a whole other book, like
Yeah.
silent. What is it? Like Ari's book.
Yeah, it's just
explain-
about the
to hash that
archives.
out.
He
Yeah,
needs to
and
write
the-
one just about the archives, about like what they're wearing. Again, the dusters and the finger nipples. It's good. I
Moral
like
store.
that look. Yeah.
But yeah, so like the next part I wanted to get into, this is the aspect that inspired this podcast, because once I learned this information from Rothfuss, it was like, okay, well now we're not gonna cover this stuff in future episodes, so we gotta fucking go back and we gotta do this. So the big thing we learn from Rothfuss in one of his streams is about King Feyda. We learn some important information about Feyda. So the only time Feyda is brought up in the books is in A Name of the Wind. So it's when Kvothe is going through admissions for the very first time, and Master Lauren is interviewing him, and it says, Master Lauren was pale and seemed unnaturally tall, even while sitting. And he asked, who was the first declared king of Tarventus. And Kvothe said, posthumously, Feyda Calanthus. Otherwise, it would be his brother, Jarvis. It's the only mention of Feyda. Now, what's important about that, Calanthus, we later learn is the surname of the king of Ventus currently. Roderick, we learn, is the king of Ventus, and his name is Roderick Calanthus. So Feyda would be one of Roderick's ancestors. The current king of Ventus, his ancestor is Feyda, who was the first king of Ventus, which was called Tarventus back then, which has gotten shortened to Ventus.
Did you mean Feyda and then posthumously his brother?
No. Posthumously Feyda. So Feyda was the first king, and the way I read it is like Feyda was like the king, but they didn't call him king when he was the king. And then when his brother took over, they called him king, but then they were like, well, Feyda was actually a king. He just didn't call himself king. So
after he died.
After the fact, they recognized that he was the king.
Yeah, that was interesting for the way you read it, because I'm like, wait, what? So he became king after he died?
Well, that's the way you said it in the quote.
Yeah. No, that's what they're saying is like after he died, they declared him king. So I'm the way I read that is he was the king, but not in name. They weren't calling him king. And then like he died, his brother took over. They called his brother king, and so they were like, well, the first one's his brother. All right, so here's what Rothfuss says in his stream talking about Feyda. And so he says that there's a drog in his book, a draugur. There's draugurs, and one of the draug was Feyda. And so he says they asked him a question about it, and like, this old dead king, like, like, is there going to be like some necromancy or something along those lines? And Rothfuss's response was, necromancy is for fucking wankers who play D&D. Feyda is a dead king, buried in the proper way, a man with the will to make a nation. And a man such as that does not merely die if he does not wish to. He comes back as a draug, and not some bullshit Skyrim draug like you're a zombie with a different name. You come back as Wizard King Feyda, first king, always king, in his barrow, watching the lands. Necromancy my ass. Through his will alone does Feyda continue to watch over Ventus. Major important information that he just dropped on us there.
Through whatever question that person asked him, it almost seems like it really pissed him off. Whatever he's dead serious about Feyda being, or is it Feyda? It's pronounced Feyda.
Feyda, but it's spelled Feyda.
That he's not dead, or he's dead, but he's still alive in some aspect, and he's not like a zombie, but he's way more powerful now. And anyway, that's clear.
Yeah, the idea that he oversees the lands, so he has influence. It sounds like he can, in some way, have influence over what's still happening, even though he's dead.
Yes. Yeah. And so, like, the way this got brought up is Rothfuss was showing a coin, a coin that had King Feyda on it. This was, like, the first coin of Ventus. And he was showing it, like, this was something he was selling for his World Builders charity. And so he was describing Feyda. And the coin shows like Feyda alive and Feyda dead. So that's where the question came up, was like, was he brought back through necromancy? And so that's where his like, nah, fuck necromancy. Nah, I'm something that like we talk about like a lot on these theories. Like when you go through the theories, like does the theory lead to an implication that would lead to some hack writing?
Yeah, so I was about to say.
And like that is a perfect example of like how much he detests fucking simpleton writing.
So
it
he
is
got
just like he's just fucking pushing a fucking square peg through a round hole. He's not gonna do that. Like if it's not, it might not be cool in our eyes, but like he feels like he is doing something better and more inventive and more creative. And I think through 2 books, I think we constantly praise him for his writing. Like we agree, like he does it.
Spending more than that.
So like if we came up with if we came up with a theory where it was like it just seems kind of whack, it's probably not what he's doing, because he's not like that, and he's so much not like that he's like he plays D&D, he plays Skyrim, and he's like shitting all
Well, so clearly he knows, he's using the references, so he knows the reference, he appreciates story, but he also knows what's hack and shortcut and what's not. And the story and a lot of those things are fantastic, and that's what people like about them so much. But as we can tell, and he writes it with Kvothe, his standard is very freaking high, which is why the books are so good and why he's been working on the 3rd book for over a decade, because his standards are very high. And that becomes very clear in this interview and this question. I forgot my thought, but So I did want to bring up, and I'm sure you're probably going to go there anyway, but just in case, what I also saw huge about that coin were the Greystones. Right.
Yeah.
So that's,
can I describe the coin?
Hold on. Before we, I'm gonna describe the coin. I got the picture in front of me.
So, all right. Let me ask this then. How long ago is Feysa? How long ago are we talking about?
I don't know. Like, I mean, they talk about when they talk about the twist of fate that took the mayor Alvaron from being a king to now he's not a king. I think they say 12 generations or something like that.
So this is all post Lanre. This is post Ajax. This is post all that stuff.
Yeah, very post that. That stuff's 5,000 years ago.
Okay, all right. That's kind of what I needed to know. Yeah.
I don't remember off the top of my head exactly how long ago that was, but here he's like,
we have a huge blank slate of time between the creation war and now. So I'm just saying, is this between them? Because if that's the case, that's what helps me. You know what I'm saying?
He says, let's see. You know the expression, rich is the king event? I nodded. Well, that's him. His great-great-grandfathers were the king's event, back before the Empire stomped in, converting everyone to the Iron Law in the Book of the Path. If not for a few quick quirks of fate, a dozen generations back, Alvaron would be the royal family of Ventus, not the Calanthus. And my friend the mayor would be king. So at least a dozen generations.
So Roderick is a Calanthus?
Roderick is a Calanthus, yes. And Phasia is Phasia Calanthus.
So the Calanthus still rules. And Phasia still rules, apparently.
Yeah, Phasia is the guy that he united all these kings, like these warring sea kings and all
clans.
This shit. He united them all into one giant kingdom.
So it's like basically a bunch of clans. I mean, this is what we've seen throughout history. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of seems like the mayor, his kingdom kind of was separate from Calanthus, and then something happened where they eventually kind of folded and kind of joined in, but kept enough autonomy for him to be as powerful as he is.
I was going to say that the impression I've gotten thus far is that Ventus was like the most powerful region, like maybe in terms of money, wealth, whatever. It seemed like Ventus has the largest influence.
Possibly Aturan was the big one, though, that we've heard about, the Aturan Empire, and like that, like in the quote I just read, the mayor's family were kings in their own right until the empire stepped in, which was the Aturan Empire. And the Aturan Empire their kind of right-hand men were the Amir. So it seems like the Aeturan Empire was kind of fucking King Double Dong for a while,
well, it seems like the Aeturan
slapping
Empire
it in the face of the Ventus.
Well, it seems like the Aeturan Empire is the most recent, right? So it's
Yeah.
I mean, that was the impression I had gotten, and you kind of validated that there, where it was Vent ruled for a long while, and then the Aeturan Empire comes in. But what you're saying is, prior to all of that, Feysa united all of these places.
United Ventus.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that he went out into where like the Commonwealth was, or into the Sealed, or where the Adem are. Doesn't mean that he was out there conquering, all the kingdoms, but he definitely created Ventus.
But not prior to that, though.
I'm saying he created Ventus. I'm not saying that he went out conquering kingdoms. There's nothing said about him going out and conquering. He just united Ventus and made it a one kingdom. I don't know, it doesn't sound like he was trying to create an empire. It sounded like he was trying to create a kingdom, and he did.
Yeah. I just want to clear it up for myself, and I should know this already, but the mayor is not of his Phaesa's blood, but of the current king's blood. So, is that correct? No, I'm sorry.
No, he's not. He's not of their. He's not of their. The Clanthus are a entirely different family. Like the mayor, it's the way it seems is the mayor. His family was kings in their own right, and then when the Aeturan Empire fucking stepped in, started fucking up shit, they folded and joined Ventus, but kept enough autonomy so that he's under the king of Vent, but he's not. He's above everybody else.
So the other thing that stuck out in my mind of something that you said was when they were describing that the Iron Law came into play, and the Book of the Path. I just know Rothfuss doesn't mince words, so I feel like that Iron Law and then Book of the Path. Those are two.
Yeah, it's the Talons.
Reoccurring
That's the
themes.
Talons.
Okay,
That's the Talons. Like Telu, the people that believe, like the people that arrest Scarpi, they are Talons that follow the Book of the Path. Like that's their Bible. The Book of the Path is their Bible. The Iron Law is like the religious justices. Like when Kvothe is brought on trial for breaking Ambrose's arm, when like he eventually gets brought on trial, and that's what leads him to leave the university for a while. Like that trial that he was on, he was brought on trial by under the Iron Law. That was by the basically the priest law. And so the Aeturans were largely Talons, and so they were spreading basically Christianity. You could think of it like that. They were out there fucking spreading Christianity through the world, and that was the Iron Law and that they were bringing, and the Book of the Path is their Bible.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah, that's clear.
All right. So the other aspect I want to bring, because he calls him a Draug, and he's like, not some bullshit Skyrim Draug. Like you're a zombie with a different name. You come back as Wizard King Faeusa, first king, always king, in his barrow, watching the lands. So a Draug, it comes from like the Vikings, Old Norse shit. And so a Draugur, the way it's described, like on like Wikipedia, it's Draugrs live in their graves, often guarding treasure buried with them in their burial mound. They are revenants, or animated corpses with a corporeal body, rather than ghosts, which possess intangible spiritual bodies. And so, like, Old Norse Draugur is defined as a ghost, a spirit, especially the dead inhabitant of a cairn. Often, the Draugur is regarded not so much as a ghost, but a revenant, i.e., the reanimated of the deceased inside the burial mound. And a cairn is a man-made pile or stack of stones. So when you tie all those together, when he's calling him a drog, a cairn, a man-made pile or stack of stones, sounds like a barrow. Sounds like the descriptions he gives of a barrow is like a funeral kind of a pile built to bury people.
So you're asking for some real fucking trouble when you're fucking with that shit. Like the moth
digging them
family.
up.
Well, like when he's like, he talks about like, this is a guy buried in the proper way. Seems like barrows burying them in a barrow. There's a specific reason for doing that. It's not just simply like, we like fucking building mounds and burying them for fun. There's something specific about it.
It's not alive, but it keeps them whatever type of alive this is. Whatever you just described. It's not a ghost. It's a cadaverous body or something. It's like a fucking zombie. Sounded like.
Yeah.
But I think he's saying it's a wizard. It's not something that decrepitates or goes backwards.
Yeah, it's like it's dead, but it's extremely powerful. It's not like a slow moving zombie. This is a fucking wizard king that is almost more like powerful than he was when he was fucking alive. He's dead, but he's a fucking wizard king.
More like a butterfly, like his barrow's become the cocoon, and now he's even more powerful, even better.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting when you say the Karen, because if you've ever seen a Karen talking to customer service, kind of falls in line with that. Yeah, you don't want to fuck with that shit. And that dude is like, not only has he gained strength, they don't weaken. They just, can I talk to the manager? Can I talk to your manager? Where's your manager? Where's he at? Or she? Yeah, they don't fuck around, dude.
They're unrelenting.
That's also where that comes from. I see what he's doing. I see what old Patty's doing here.
The only way to combat a Karen is a double dong.
I'm glad I brought it up.
Yeah, it's all coming clear.
What's also interesting though is like the man-made pile or stack of stones, the archives, like a giant greystone on a hill. It starts to make you think that this giant greystone on a hill is a barrow. That this is a burial fucking ground. This is a cairn. This is a barrow. This is where someone was buried. And there's a door inside the archives that is a clear door of gray stone. It's very similar to Traben, where there is gray stones, and there's a gray stone door that is on a hill, that is on a barrow, where someone was buried underneath it, or things were buried underneath it, is a burial ground. So I think part of when they're like, he's like buried in the right way, I think it is a barrow also built on graystones, that you're putting someone behind the graystones, you're burying them behind that, and that is part of the proper way. And I think that is likely what the archives actually is it's a giant fucking barrow. It's a burial ground. It's basically a giant tomb.
So when where we're at, you mentioned where we're actually at, episode 18, and on that part about the Moffin Farm, I'll just throw out that because when I was reading it, I was like, it's called Barrow Hill, that it is a burial ground, and him and Dinah talk about that, and then the guy that picks him up in the cart and tells him a little bit more about the Moffins says, oh, he dug up all these graves. But then Kvothe later on comes back to the hill and he says, no, they didn't know what a barrow was. This is not a barrow. This is just a place where these stones were. And they don't know what these stones are or what they look like. So Kvothe doesn't think that at least in that chapter, about it's called.
He
Barrow
thinks it's
Hill,
a fort. He thinks it's a fort,
a fort,
but
yes,
he could be wrong. It could be a burial ground. Things were buried under it, but it is. There are things buried and hidden.
Well, we find that out.
At least significant.
It's Chandrian shit. It's significant shit.
We find that out very, very clearly with the pottery.
They're buried by a gray stone door. So I mean I don't know what the significance of that is, and we'll talk more about that in episode 19. But yeah, there's something significant going on there.
If it's both, Locker draws and door, right? I mean, I don't know. That's what it hints at to me. If it's a fort and a barrow ground,
it could be, and we'll get into that in chapter 19, or in episode 19. But the big thing I want to finish up on is here's the 4-plate door. The other aspect is someone asked him, Rothfuss, he was like, isn't this a spoiler? And he says, I mean, Phaedra's already come up in the books. He says, I mean, Kvothe literally says, have you not read them? I've stolen princesses back from sleeping barrow kings, right? He clearly gives it away that Phaedra is the sleeping barrow king that Kvothe steals the princesses back from. And if this guy's a dragaur, he's a dead king. He's an old dead king. When Feyda says, I dreamed that there's an old dead king behind this door, who the fuck else could it be? I think it clearly, I already thought, before I got any of this information, I already thought that her dream was what was behind the door, that there was an old dead king. I didn't know who the old dead king was. Now, I am certain that the old dead king she dreamed about behind the door is Phaeda.
King Koopa.
That she dreamed about fucking Phaeda. And we will get into the King Koopa. Like, I think that fucking, it ties in perfectly with this theory.
Yeah, no, I think it makes it, I think Rothfuss dropped a big old piece there just to point it out. But, and he also said, dude, read the books. It's there.
Yeah, it's in the book. Like I said, like
that you were theorizing.
I had already determined that it was the Barrow King behind that door. I just had not put together that Phaeda was the Barrow King. So the only thing he connected for me is who the king was. That was already my theory. But what's
funny is that
what he gave is like it confirmed that I'm right.
Well, yeah, but it's also in the book. So it's there. It was there to find. You just had to connect it. So he gave it. Yeah, it's there. It's just, Again, that's something you would get in book 3, right? If he didn't say any of this, you would get that censure, right, in book 3. And that's what this is all about. I mean, we're speculating on different connections that could be made. Some will be right, some will be wrong. Who knows?
Yeah, and that's like when that guy's like, is that a spoiler? It's like, well, like we talked about in episode 11, and I specifically said that I think that what's behind that door is the sleeping Barrow King. And like that he steals back princesses from the Barrow King. Like, I think that's who's going to be. The only thing is, I didn't know who the Barrow King was. Now I'm certain that it's Phaeda.
The big mystery remains. I mean, we know it's Phaeda. We know very little about Phaeda. He pieced those two things together and said, okay, the sleeping Barrow King that Kvothe saves the princesses from is Phaeda. So what do we now know? Anything more? No, we don't know shit.
Well, we do. We do know more. Because there's the coin that they sell where this whole thing came from. There's a coin that it's divided into half. On the top half of the coin, you have King Phaeda, and he's holding his sword pointing down in his right hand, and in his left hand he's holding up like a parchment. And standing next to him there's 2 guys with like shields and swords on one side, and then 3 more on the other side of him. and there's the sun above his head. And then on the bottom half of the coin there's the moon. It's a crescent moon over his head. And the guys are gone. He's still got the sword, but he's holding the sword pointing up. And instead of the parchment, he's holding some kind of plant. And behind him, instead of the guys standing behind him, it is gray stone doorways. So like 2 gray stones with one on top, like an archway gray stone. There's multiple. You can see 4 of them, and there's probably one blocked off by him. So there's probably like 5 of them standing behind him. That's significant, the fact that he is standing in front of gray stone doorways. And I think the plant in his hand is probably significant as well.
I'm sorry, what's in his other hand besides the sword?
Plant.
A plant. And when he's in the sunlight, it's a parchment. But when he's with the moonlight and he's dead, he's the dragaur. And that's the other thing. He's alive in the with the sun, and then in the bottom picture he's dead. He's the dragaur in the bottom picture, and he's holding a plant. So here's my things on a couple of the aspects of it. The fact that he's standing in like behind a bunch of like archways, I think is hinting towards the fact that he is in Faeriniel. They talk about the double circle of gray stones and that there's the archway with the shadow over it. I think that he's likely, his barrow is in Faeriniel. And beyond that, the plant that he's holding in his hand, I think could be the plant that has to do with the Kvothe. He says like maybe the flower in his hand is from the Kvothe tree, because they talk about a renna flower, which act as a panacea. They are able to cure any disease or heal any wound.
Oh yeah, isn't there a discussion between Denna and Savoy and Kvothe? He'll make you go to the seeing tree.
That's different. The renna flower is in when Bast and Kvothe are talking about the Fae. Kvothe mentions how, like, okay, when Bast is telling him like how dangerous the Kvothe is, he starts retelling his story that he heard from Faeriniel, where a guy was in love with a princess and she fell deathly sick, and he went and stole took a renna flower from the tree that the Kvothe's in. And he brought it back to her, and it healed her. But then she was promised to be married to some prince, on another land. And so then they hooked up, and then the prince found out that, they were in love. And so, a big civil war broke out. So it was like to point out how dangerous the Kvothe is. Yeah. Like, this guy comes in to save this girl's life, but by saving her life, it results in a civil war happening. And he's like, Bass is like, that's whatever story. He's like, that's one of the warnings about the Kvothe. So that's where that story comes in. I mean, obviously we'll get to it eventually, but regardless, the renna flower is mentioned as a panacea. And
so the fact that he's
could be that this guy's a drog, that he's back from the dead. It could be that the, renna flower is important in being able to survive death to become a drog.
So if he's there in Mir Terrenial and he's at this spot with the gray stones, there's a crescent moon. My mind immediately goes to when Faeriniel and Kvothe are there. Why isn't he stopping them? Is that what he's there for? Is he there in spirit, or is he there to hinder something? Because he's there with a sword. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think that if King Feyda is in Faeriniel, that it could be that he had himself buried in the proper way to become a drog to guard against the doors of stone so that no one could get behind them. That he wanted to be back there to prevent Ajax from being released to protect his land. I don't know exactly why he did what he did, but that would be my initial instinct, would be to guess that he's guarding the foreplate. I mean, he's guarding the doors of stone. He's guarding against Ajax being released.
So he's, I mean, depending on your perspective, he's a good guy.
Could be,
right?
yeah.
I mean, but then, so Kvothe rescues a princess. So he's rescuing a princess from the sleeping Barrow King. The princess is holding the sleeping Barrow King, who's probably trying to get behind the door. If that's his task, if that's his, right?
It could be that he's just a complete bastard and that he just happens to fucking lock himself behind, in order to live forever, to be fucking king wizard, fucking Feysa, fucking big double dong dick in it, in order to be this dude, that he had to fucking be buried in this way behind these doors, and that he just happens to be in the way of the doors of stone, or maybe he's not in the way of the doors of stone at all. I don't know. So I don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy, but I would be surprised if he's not near the doors of stone.
Well, it makes sense,
considering the fact that on the coin he's standing in front of a bunch of fucking doors of stone.
No, I'm spinning off what it means. I'm accepting what you're saying and saying, okay, then what does this mean for the other context?
So it would make sense though if he's it makes sense in two aspects. One, because Kvothe does say princesses, right?
Yes.
Plural. If Denna is some kind of princess and on behalf of Mayor Alderon, she somehow accesses into the four-plate door to get some kind of information, and he's there trying to hold it. And at the same time, if for some reason he's also keeping Ari captive down there, and Kvothe rescues both of them from him, I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility. I'll run. We'll run through kind of putting all of what we've talked about together here. But one last thing I want to mention though is on the coins is he's holding a sword that kind of looks weird in the coin. And for anybody who's listening, all you have to do is Google King Feysa coin. King Feysa, Feyda coin, and you'll be able to see pictures of the coin that we're talking about. But he's holding a sword, and the sword kind of looks a little bit weird, and it's possible that Folly, the sword that he steals, is when he's stealing back the princesses from the Barrow King, he also steals his sword. And so when Bass is like, what the fuck were you thinking? You stole King Feysa's sword? Why would you risk that? And it could be that's where the sword Folly comes from, is that he stole it from fucking King Feysa.
That'd be pretty great.
But yeah, that's pure speculation. So, but let's put everything together. So I think we can confirm Feysa is the sleeping Barrow King. He's a drog, which fits with fellas dreaming of an old dead king. So it's likely that he's behind the four-plate door. Ari, I think, is likely one of the princesses he stole back from the sleeping Barrow King. Maybe Denna is too. Maybe the story, when they call him, when they say he rescued two princesses back from, or he stole back two princesses back from the Barrow King, could be that they're not actually princesses, but that's just how the story got interpreted. But regardless, I think, the two most likely candidates for who we would steal back from this guy would be Ari and Denna. I think it's because of that he's standing on the coin in front of Greystones. It's also likely that the four-plate door is behind it is Faeriniel, which would lead you to the doors of stone. So it could be that they have the 4-plate door is to keep Phasia out. So, maybe that, because he was the king of Ventus, so maybe there's multiple ways into Faeriniel, but Faeriniel is the road to everywhere. So once you're in Faeriniel, you can get everywhere. So maybe they created a 4-plate door to prevent anyone from going into Faeriniel and getting to the university from there. So maybe they blocked off their entrance so that people can't get to them. Or it could be that there's some aspect of the university, the giant greystone, that in order to become a Draug, even though he's the king of Ventus, he had to be buried in the Commonwealth to be able, he was buried in the proper way. So maybe he had to be buried behind this 4-plate door. So maybe in that scenario, the only way into Faeriniel is through the 4-plate door, and maybe the only way to come back as a Draug is to be buried in Faeriniel. So that could explain why he would be in Ventus but be buried in the Commonwealth, is he wanted to be buried in the proper way to be able to come back. And then with Faeriniel being a portal to everything else, something we could look towards for book 3 is that Kvothe's got to go back to the Fae. He's got to go to Rainier and see King Roderick. He's got to probably go back to the mayor. I don't think the coin or the ring the bone ring that he got from Stapes, I don't think that's going to be unimportant. I think that's going to come into play. So I think he has to go back and see Stapes again, or the mayor. He's got to go back there. So he's got to travel to a lot of different places. So it would make sense that he learns how to get into Faeriniel, and that helps him travel around the world without this taking 7-8 years to do all these different things. So he learns how to get into the Fae, how to get to Rainier, how to get to where the mayor is by traveling through these portals. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it's it's tying together a lot of loose ends. A lot of stuff coming together there.
It would also too, because we talk about the Tall, and the Tall could be past the Stormwall Mountains, and so they talk about the Tall enough times. But how the fuck would he travel all the way to where they live, and to all these different places? The only way he could do that is if Rothfuss gave him a shortcut, and he's able to fucking bounce to these places he needs to go in a short amount of time. So that if Faeriniel is this nexus where you can travel to wherever you want in the world, it would make sense that Kvothe is able to get back there, and he uses it for that purpose.
I wonder if Noir is the farthest away you can be from a Greystone. I don't know. I just wonder, given he's hiding, and if
best guess on where Noir is it's in part of Vent. He talks about he, when he comes up, when he acts like he hurts himself, bangs his knee, is tell him, I got shot with an arrow, traveling in the Eldic woods or whatever they call it. That's the woods that are in Ventus. And when he's talking about the Skrael, I thought they were gonna be further away. The way he describes them distance wise, and over the mountains, the Stormwall Mountains would be to the east of the Ventus, and the coinage, the discussion. There's different reasons why you could kind of narrow it down to that he's close to Ator, and that he's in Ventus based on the coinage and that kind of stuff. So that he's in part of Ventus, but he's also close to Ator, and by the woods. So there's only a very small segment of the land where that could be. But it's more than likely that Nowhere is somewhere near Ventus, somewhat close to the road to Tenue.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
The last little part though, like I wanted to bring up on that was Master Elodin. Like I talked about, like it could be that he got cracked trying to open the 4-plate door.
Yeah.
Now that I know who is behind the 4-plate door, it could be that he got behind there and he met Feysa, and that's why he's cracked.
Huh.
That he fucking went at this dude, or ran into him, and fucking Feysa fucked him up.
Do you think Phasia has like a Grey Dalcenti deal where he can make people go crazy?
Could be.
Or he just, I guess probably the best terminology for that is he just kind of blew his nips off, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he just blew his fucking nips off.
And that's what it is. That's what it is to go to the crookery. You just had your nips blown off. And you haven't recovered, So you say things like, it's in me, it's in me, it's in me.